Have you ever heard of a unicorn book, aka a book that just blows your expectations out of the water because it sells so incredibly well? Well, a donkey book is like the opposite of that, where it performs way worse than expected. It does not sell well at all, and it's like a cute little stubborn, annoying donkey. I thought this would be fun to talk about because I've been questioning if The Queen's Rise, my newest release, might be a donkey book. All things that we're going to talk about in this video, and I'll explain like what really defines a donkey book. And of course, spoiler, it does depend on the author a little bit because we're not all going to be New York Times bestsellers, obviously, and that doesn't make the book bad if it's not a New York Times bestseller. But also, how do you decide if your particular book might be a donkey book, and like what are the factors that you consider? And then last but not least, what do you do if it is a donkey book? And there's two things that I typically will consider doing. And I've done this once before with the first book inside here, because this is actually 3 books in one. It used to be a novella, the first edition, and I noticed some donkeyish qualities, so I actually republished it as a second edition with some changes. We're going to talk about all of that in this video as we kind of use The Queen's Rise as our case study today. But before I say anything else, I just want to say nothing is necessarily wrong with a donkey book. It just means that it's not having the same universal appeal. And I really do want to repeat that it is not a bad book necessarily. It could be a great book. It's just for some reason, it's not attracting as many readers as a typical book might. To use our metaphor, unicorns appeal to the masses and donkeys are just cute to some. And then you've got your regular horses, which are just like your average book. Am I stretching this metaphor a little too far? Probably. Anyway, let's start with number 1. What defines a donkey book? The first place I would start is with sales and asking yourself, is the selling as well as my other books? That's kind of your first hint, but obviously if you're publishing for the first time, you might not have anything to compare to yet. It makes it a little bit trickier, and I get that. So reader interest would also be a really big indicator, and that means things like, you know, when you post about it, for example, do you get comments like, oh my gosh, I love that genre or that trope, or I have to buy it now, or I just got it, put it in my cart. That's my favorite one. Or do you get crickets? I would say those two things, sales and reader interest, can indicate if the book is potentially a donkey book or not. But how do you decide if your specific book is a donkey book? Again, let's use this as a case study. There are a couple questions that I would typically ask myself even before I started using this term jokingly. And the first one is, did this book get as many pre-orders as previous books? Obviously, if you don't do pre-orders, then just do like maybe your first month of sales. But typically, I'll start asking myself, is this book doing well during the pre-order phase? So that's why I use pre-order numbers, and I kind of try to compare to other books to see if it's performing similarly or above or below. Keep in mind, every book is different, right? To use our horse metaphor, not every horse is the same, so why would every book be exactly the same? We're not talking a difference of, I don't know, 10 or 20 books one way or the other, more like 100 books or more, like something that's way different than past releases. If your answer is yes, it actually did perform pretty well compared to other books, then I don't think it's a donkey book. I know as authors, we do want to always see an increase, right? I get that. Like our writing's grown. Hopefully all our marketing choices are continuing to grow and all these things. So we want to always see an increase. However, you just gotta be realistic that sometimes there are just certain factors that are out of our control. Like maybe the genre is slightly different, or just certain tropes aren't appealing to readers as much. It doesn't make it a bad book, it just means it might not sell quite as well as other books. Or if it's a book 2 in a series, for example, it's never gonna sell as well as book 1, and you just kind of have to accept that and be like, that's okay, that's fine. So that's why I say like close to as many pre-order sales, not necessarily more than the last books. But if the answer is no, it actually did not get anywhere close to as many sales, I don't know what's going on, then the next thing I do is take a look at why. And I'll ask myself, is it the book's fault or is it my fault, or both? To check if it's my fault, I might ask myself, have I been doing a good job at marketing, or have I been slacking? Is there anything I'm doing differently with my promotions maybe? Things like that. To check if it's the book's fault, I might ask things like, is this cover really right for the target reader and the genre expectations? Is the blurb, aka the back description, as attention grabbing as I would hope, or could I rewrite it? I would check the keywords and categories. That's something that I will admit I forget to do all the time, and I really need to go back through my books because it's good to do this periodically anyway. So note to self to do after this video. Is it a novella or an omnibus? Because those types of books just honestly don't sell as well as a regular novel. So let's use The Queen's Rise as our example for this because this is what triggered this video today. I had alarm bells going off. I was like, oh gosh, something is not good here. And when I was asking myself, is this book getting as many pre-orders as typical books for me? The answer was a shocking, not even close, like blowing my mind so bad that I was just like, oh no, have I made a huge mistake? In fact, the pre-order number that I'm about to show you is so bad that not even my debut is this bad. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Even my debut performed better. It had a Kickstarter with like 60, 70 people and just over 100 books sold for that debut novel. So this number, like in the history of all my book sales, I have never seen something perform this badly. I could drag this out, but I'm just gonna show you. You ready? Oh, it went up by one book. Okay, this is the pre-order tab on KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. This is Amazon specific sales. It actually went up, so 7 books, 7 pre-orders. Now before you go anywhere and you're like, oh my gosh, this girl does not know what she's doing. She's only selling 7 books. Well, I was feeling the same way. I'm like, have I lost my touch? Well, what's going on? Like, wow, I should just quit now. But I fortunately have amazing author friends who reminded me, like, Bethany, you did a Kickstarter back in February that absolutely counts as pre-orders. That's where this book actually came from. And that Kickstarter did extremely well. It had 169 hardcover copies go out. And then of course you have to consider there was also ebook. So the total number of people on that Kickstarter campaign was 193. So 193 plus 7 is actually exactly 200 books. Then on top of that, I'm very thankful to have author friends because they reminded me, like, they asked the question, so that's just Amazon, right? What about your other ebook vendors like on Draft to Digital, which I haven't actually looked at in a long time. I'm trying to remember if they even have a pre-order page. I don't see a pre-order page. I wonder if I go to my books. No, it doesn't say on my books page either. So I don't know if there's a pre-order option on Draft to Digital that I'm just missing, but my hope is that, considering that that is Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Apple Books, there's tons of libraries on here. My hope anyway is that there are some ebook pre-orders there as well. But again, thanks to those amazing author friends for reminding me that when you have a beautiful book like this, the majority of people who want to get it are probably actually going to get the hardcover, not the ebook. And so Ingram Spark is where my hardcovers are, and I've talked about my frustrations with that company before. It's not my favorite. And they've said straightforward to me in the past that they don't actually have pre-order tracking. It's only useful once the books start printing, which doesn't happen until 10 days before release. So at this point, we're actually filming September 11th, roughly 20 days out from release. So there's nothing to report on that screen, and I have no idea how many hardcovers might be ordered. It might be none, or it might be a lot. It's hard to say. But if you count the Kickstarter as pre-orders, which I realized, yeah, I absolutely should count that. Those are books going out into the world that people ordered. Then I actually am over 200. So it's performing quite a bit better than I thought. However, before I talked to my author friends, before I remembered that, yeah, there's ebooks elsewhere and there's hardcovers as well that I haven't tracked, before I remembered the Kickstarter, I was looking at this dismal number, which actually at the time when I started asking these questions of myself was 3. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to immediately address this. So I started going through those 2 questions that I told you about. Is it my fault, and or is it the book's fault? And kind of, what's the word that I want? Evaluating everything about this book. So the first question, when it comes to at least that KDP number of pre-orders, is it my fault? Yes. Absolutely. I would say after I did an amazing job marketing, I really tried to market that Kickstarter really well in February, I just fell off the face of the earth. I got pregnant in March and I was just so exhausted. The first trimester was awful. The second trimester has been pretty exhausting as well, and I've just not been marketing the way that I normally do. I've been slacking big time. Now, fortunately, I talked about this in past videos where I actually knew that I was gonna have trouble, so I hired some companies to help me. One of them being Storygram Tours, which I've worked with in the past and I enjoyed them a lot. And then also I did another month on NetGalley, which I've done some videos about that as well if you're interested. And I will link the co-op that I work with below if you want. I'm actually technically an affiliate now, and I would absolutely say let Anne know that I sent you, because she's amazing and I really love working with this company. So those two things did help, but I will call myself out and say I am not doing my best when it comes to marketing this book. So is it my fault? Yeah, a little bit. And then when it comes to, is it the book's fault? Then I ask those questions again, like, is the cover something that is grabbing readers? Now, I'm just going to use the first book in the series, The Secret Gift, as our case study for this, because back then I actually talked to my cover designer and my good friend Mandy Lynn at the time, and we were like, you know what? Maybe these covers actually aren't as on genre as we thought they were, and maybe we could target readers even more. So we actually went from the first edition cover to the second edition cover. When it comes to this gorgeous book, however, I really do think, I know I'm biased, but I have also gotten a lot of outside feedback, including actually NetGalley, which has this fun little vote on the cover that tells me I think this cover is performing pretty dang well. The second thing that I typically will change, and I've changed it multiple times actually on this book and all of my past books, just to experiment, because you can always change it back. You can actually change your book description at almost any time. So I'm sure that I changed the description of The Secret Gift probably multiple times at this point, but I also did end up taking a look at the description of this book and thinking, you know what? I thought it was really good, but there are some things that are unclear. And so I'm going to actually update that as well. And I could continue to update it. I've talked about this in my blurb video where it's like, you can change this at any time. You are not locked in, and it's not a big deal to try something for a few weeks. That's something that you can do at any time. So here's my current blurb, if you're curious. And the good news is that NetGalley has also given me a little bit of feedback on that to show that that's actually pretty effective as well for making people want to read this. So that's encouraging to see as well. With The Secret Gift, it's been a couple years now since I did that book, but I'm sure I did all the other little improvements, the keywords and categories, all those little things that you can do. But actually the biggest thing that I did is one that I would not necessarily recommend except in extreme circumstances. And that is that I actually took that initial novella and turned it into a full novel by adding over 50 pages of story. And the reason that I bring that up is because improvements are the next thing that we're going to talk about. And those improvements that I made on The Secret Gift actually made it so that the second time I released it, that second edition got way more pre-orders than the first edition got. So I know from actual evidence that those changes worked. So let's talk about what do you do if your book potentially is a donkey book and all the things that I consider doing. Before I share any of this, I do think it's important to take a step back and take the emotions out of it, because like I've been saying all along since the beginning of this video, a donkey book is not necessarily a bad book. It could be a great book that just is, say, an omnibus or a novella that just naturally won't sell as well. Or it could be in a genre that's just not taking off right now. Just little things like that that you have to consider before you make any choices and waste too much time or money on anything. All right, option one is something I kind of already hinted at. I've been giving away a lot throughout this video just by sharing my stories. But option one is to say, what can I change and improve so that it starts performing better? I've been jumping the gun and sharing a lot of the things that I did already. So I'll just give you the short list again. Take a look at the cover, see if it fits reader expectations or if it could be improved. That's a more expensive one. So I actually will typically start with, normally it's on the back, but this book has it on the inside flap because it's a hardcover. I would take a look at the blurb, aka the description of the book. On the online vendors, don't worry about changing this unless you change the cover. And then say, hey, can I make this better? And just update the online description, leave it for a few weeks and see if it makes a difference in sales. There's also keywords and categories. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but just generally take a look at the book itself and ask yourself, is there anything I could improve so that it might grab readers a little bit more? You could even technically consider rewriting bits of the story to add, like tropes readers love, or to address issues that they have, or to give it a editing pass if it wasn't edited very well, little things like that. But like I mentioned earlier, this last detail is the one thing that I would be very, very cautious of doing. I'd be cautious of doing all of them if you don't know that it'll help. But rewriting is obviously the most time consuming and potentially the most expensive if you bring editors in again. And I personally don't think it helps us authors to go backwards very often. Rarely is it good to go backwards. It's better for our growth and our career to move forwards, move on to the next book and just make the next book better. But obviously I did once let myself go backwards and rewrite that book, The Secret Gift, right? So my thought process, my personal approach to this is it's going to almost always be a no unless you can almost guarantee that it's going to be a massive benefit to you for your career and for your writing in general. So with The Secret Gift, I wish I had The Secret Gift in here that I could like hold it up and show you, but just picture this novella, and I'm going to share the story really quickly of how I realized after I'd already published it as a novella, thinking this is just a minor side story, it's not going to be my main focus. It hit me as I talked to readers who loved this story, who wanted more from her, that actually I had a full series in me of 3 books, and I really, really wanted to write them. I had the passion to write them, I had the excitement, and it was a good fit for my career because it was still on genre. So that's why when I objectively looked at The Secret Gift, I thought, well, you know what? Novellas don't sell well, and if I want to turn it into a series, a novella is not the best place to start, and I could absolutely expand on the story and turn it into a full-length novel. And that was my attempt to approach this from a very business-minded perspective of, is this a wise move for my career? Yes, I think it is, because I have 2 more books in me, and if I don't fix book 1, these 2 books will not do well either. And I really think that changing book 1 saved the rest of the series, but also those 2 books made it more worth it to change book 1 as well, if that makes sense, because that sell-through kind of pays for the changes I made to book 1. But let's talk about a more common example where I do not think it would be worth it, and that is my debut, for example, Evelyn's Number. This is not even a genre I write anymore. It's like a Christian dystopian mix of some kind. The work involved will be far more than just adding 50 pages because my writing is so incredibly different. I don't feel like that's a good representation of my writing at all anymore, and I would probably have to rewrite the entire book. In the end, it's going to be a personal decision. If you're really attached to your book, it might be worth it. But my personal conviction is it's almost never worth it. You have to really have a lot of good arguments to justify it. Otherwise, it's better to just move forward and make the next book better. Okay, so that's option 1, which is to improve the book in some way and see if it helps. But option 2 is to basically let that book go with a hug and I love you so much, and just let it go. And I say like let it go with a hug because I just really, really want to continue to remind all of us, including myself, that donkey books aren't bad books. They're our cute little baby that just unfortunately isn't as interesting to our readers as we thought it would be. And there's nothing wrong with it, but we don't want to keep putting a ton of time and a ton of money into something that's not actually giving anything back. And that leads perfectly into the next thing I want to talk about, which is what not to do with a donkey book. And that is, please, please, please learn from me and do not keep pouring time and money into something that is kind of a money pit. It's tempting, I get it. And so my method, as I've kind of tried to approach this again from a business perspective, is to set a small budget and not let myself go past that point and see if it can make its money back on that small budget. If it doesn't, fully let it go. But if it does, I might continue to invest a little bit more and just see if it can continue to gain traction and it's just a little bit slower than other books. When I say let it go, I don't mean like give up on it forever. I just mean be really, really cautious about your investments, time and energy and money, all that, because it's still a wonderful book. It's still going to grab readers, and maybe, just maybe down the road, it will stop being a donkey book and it will just take off unexpectedly. You never know. But I just feel like as authors, we are so close to our books that it's really hard to recognize if we're kind of making a money pit. To tie this all up with our case study, The Queen's Rise, is this a donkey book, or is it maybe like a cute little Shetland pony that everybody's like, oh, it's so cute and I do want it, but I just don't really need it? That's stretching the metaphor like a little too far. I know. My thoughts when I first saw those pre-order numbers, as you know, was like, crap, this is such a massive donkey book. And like I said, fortunately, once I remembered the Kickstarter and I kind of did the math and I remembered that there's all those potential hardcovers coming in, the book's not even out yet and it's already over 200 sales, I took a big breath of relief. Okay, I don't think it's a donkey book, especially when I remembered that I don't have a copy in here either, but the Stolen Kingdom series is my other omnibus. And I was like, you know what? I didn't do a pre-order for that, but I can look at my release week numbers. So I pulled that up and it said, let me just double check so I don't mess this up. The Stolen Kingdom is just on Amazon. So if I look at just that book, the box set, which is ebook, and then the collector's edition, which is the hardcover, I am going to screenshot this for you. It says 69 sales for release week. Is that the week or is that the month? I don't actually remember, but 69 compared to 200, like this might actually be a unicorn omnibus for me, and I didn't even realize it. But it all depends on how it performs going forward, and I'm going to continue to keep an eye on it and continue to ask those questions. Mainly the question of, am I giving it the marketing that it deserves? Because compared to how well the Kickstarter went with my marketing then and how I was on top of it compared to these last few months where I didn't have the energy to market at all, I do think that it's actually my fault that the pre-orders are low and not the book's fault at all. So I'm actually really excited to see how this release month goes and kind of keep tracking the numbers and see like if I start marketing better and doing my part, and also if some of these awesome Instagram tours and the NetGalley stuff helps the book take off. We'll see if this book continues to perform well or not. Oh my gosh, I look like a mess. I don't have makeup on. I'm just like a total mess. My son's screaming out of the other room instead of going to sleep, but I just looked at my Ingram Spark account. Let me show you this number. I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just covering my account number. It is September 16th today. And I just opened Ingram to show a friend something totally different about how to find royalties. And I was like, what is this number? Like, I usually don't sell hardly any books on Ingram because my Amazon sales are separate and they are the ones where I sell the most books. So what is this number? I'm actually freaking out a little bit because I did not expect that when I already sold so many through the Kickstarter. That's, wow. I'm having a bit of a panic attack in a good way. I guess they're just showing up because it's 2 weeks from release now and they're starting to print maybe and go out. I don't know if they're printing, I actually have no idea, but it's actually reporting them. I'm just like hyperventilating a little bit. What's happening right now? I've never expected this many for the omnibus. I'm hyperventilating a little bit. I just don't know what to say. I hope it's a real number. Like, my brain is going, is this real? I was just taking care of my toddler and just coming on to check something quick and then go and take care of the house and do all these things. And my mind wasn't even on this, and now I'm just blown away. I'm gonna call my husband and be like, guess what? Because honestly, I was hopeful that this book would do well, but it already did so well in Kickstarter, like we talked about, that I was like, it makes sense that it wouldn't, you know, have hundreds of sales during release month. That's exciting. That's really exciting to see. And who knows, because we're still 2 weeks out, maybe there's going to be more printed. Maybe they're printing all at once. I don't know. I don't know what to expect. Obviously, I got to start editing this video to get it out to you guys. So I guess we'll find out together. Follow me on Instagram. That's typically where I share stuff like this real time. And maybe I'll do like a release day vlog even if I have time. Oh my gosh. I'm so tired right now that I don't know if I want to promise that, but I also do because I'm so excited seeing this number. Anyway, I just want to share. I'm just very, very thankful that you guys are excited about this book and that you are interested in it. And I just hope that will continue to be the case. So if you are interested in pre-ordering, there is 1 week left. You can grab this book and there's pre-order gifts linked in the description box below. And then obviously I'm excited if you want to get it after the release as well. I'm very, very, very excited for you to read it. So thank you in advance. You're amazing. This is honestly my favorite book that I've written currently, well, series technically. And I am a little nervous that being that it's 3 books and one is more expensive and that price point might turn readers away, but hopefully everybody who sees it will realize that it's 3 books in one. I've got my future best-selling author earrings to set the vibes, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a really fun one to chat about. And in the next video, I'm going to share exactly how much money I spent on publishing this book and marketing and if I made my money back. So I will see you in the next one. Make sure you don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll talk to you then.